Gyruda, Doom of Death.
I'm in on this one. Let me talk
Yeah.
about Gyruda.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Hold on, I'm just gonna pull it up here on Scryfall. There it is.
He was prepared for class.
Welcome to you, John, and also to the listeners to the MTG Thoughtcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joseph. Across from me on the screen or in your ears is my brother in Christ and my brother in blood, John Kendall. John, how have you been today, dude?
Ooh, oh boy. You know, new year, new podcast. What better way to stay relevant than talking about 5-year-old game mechanics?
Absolutely. And here we are doing just that. Yeah, we're talking about companions today. It's a new year. We're in a lull, as you can tell. We're gonna talk about the best things that you can do with companions. What the heck are companions? Why does some of them say one thing and some of them say another thing for how companion works? We're going to get into all that, but before we do you know what the perfect companion for this episode is? It's our Discord. It's totally free. Link down below. We talk and hang out there all the time. We play spell table games. We get deck building going. It's a way to get direct access to me and to John and to the entire incredible Thoughtcast community, and we would love to have you there. While you're down there, there's a bunch of buttons that you can press, like likes and comments and subscribes and all of the beautiful little tingly buttons that YouTube puts down there. If you just hit all of those, it helps us out and it's totally free. We actually don't want any of your money. Shockingly, we don't want any of it. We just want you to press buttons. That's all that we're asking. Is that if you feel so inclined and you want to support the channel and you want to see our faces or you want to hear our voices more often. Oh, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can give us a 5-star review. That actually helps a ton. Spotify likes those. So yeah. Now that all that's out of the way, I don't think there's anything else I have to go over before we can start talking about some companions, John.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
The shilling keeps going. Yep, just keep. Yeah. Oh, do the follows, do the likes, give us.
God, it's the worst part of my episode, but it works.
Follow the podcast on Spotify. You know, we've got a lot of followers, actually. I've been checking in on that recently, more than I ever thought that we were going to. So everybody following on our Spotify, thank you so much.
Shout out to our lovely audio only listeners.
We all of you on YouTube as well. Thank you.
Yeah, we get this edited. Shockingly, you might be surprised to find that we actually edit this audio so that it sounds good for you listeners. So we do care about you Spotify listeners.
Crispy.
The crispy audio in the Spotify. All right, we gotta move on from here. We're diving down a weird hole that I don't want to follow down anymore.
Yeah. But thank you so much to everybody. We're looking forward to this fantastic new year of new episodes and new ideas. So let's talk about the old.
Absolutely. Let's dive straight into it. John, this was an episode that you wanted to talk about, and that was also voted on in our Discord to talk about the companions.
Exactly, yeah.
Why don't you start us off maybe answering some questions about what is a companion?
Yeah, exactly. So you know how it goes with me. I love giving the groundwork on those kinds of things. I love doing the homework, the research. So
you wouldn't be the Oracle if you weren't.
Yeah. And you know what? I say this kind of almost like jokingly or whatever, but you know, you and me both, we've had conversations with friends of ours who have joined as part of the Discord. And like, not everybody has been part of the game for longer than a year and a half at a go. You know, you never know when somebody is new into the game. So talking about something even like this that is like a 5-year-old, coming up on 5-year-old, I should say, game mechanic, somebody may not even know like what the heck you're talking about.
Absolutely. You might run into somebody who has 3 cards in their command zone and you're going to think that they're cheating, but they're not.
Exactly. So what is this we're talking about here? These are the established as probably initially the worst game mechanic that they ever decided to try. For lack of a better term, the companions broke Magic.
They did.
Fundamentally.
They fundamentally broke a piece of the game to the point where they had to errata the entire mechanic.
Which
So,
has never happened before
correct.
in the history of the game. So
What I would give for some precedence.
So what are we talking about here? So we are talking about the cycle of 10 hybrid colored legendary creatures from the booster set Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths. They
Unbelievable
were
set.
Yeah, great set, firstly, by the way. Not a lot of people had an opportunity to really dive deep into this, especially in paper, because, no, something shut down the world or something
Yeah,
to
you
that
know.
degree. So, um,
Oh God, COVID was 5 years ago. Sorry. Existential crisis. Move on.
did reality just set in on you there for a
Sure
moment?
did.
Sick. The original companion cards, all 10 of them, came out with Ikoria, Lair of Behemoth. They were a cycle of 10 multicolored cards. That if you had your deck, whichever your starting deck was going to be, either limited play like draft or pre-releases at the time, 60 card constructed for like modern or pioneer, or like what we are talking about today, commander. If your deck restrictions met the condition that the legendary creature asked of you, this legendary creature could sit in your, I guess what would be called your sideboard. Some people called it the
Right.
companion zone, or it because it didn't come from the command zone. The command zone is something different.
Right.
These came out essentially from your sideboard. And once,
Outside of the game.
yeah, outside the game, you could cast them from outside the game. That's how they originally were worded.
Busted.
Since then, the game mechanic went on to basically break every constructed format that all the
Yes.
cards were legal in, to the point that the companion mechanic as a whole had to get errated and changed on how it worked. You can
Right.
you can still have the legendary creature in your sideboard, and you could still bring them in from outside. There now is just a restriction, though, of at sorcery speed, 3 mana, and the card goes to your hand.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, every single companion ended up getting a 3 extra mana sorcery speed tax applied to them. And apparently, even that still didn't stop them, still didn't slow
Yep.
them down. As over the course of the years since these came out, we've had ones like Yoron and Lutri and Lurus, and I think most recently Jengantha banned in
Yes.
constructed format. So even on a tax restriction like that, these are very, very powerful for 60 constructed.
Very much so. I think they talked about the original intention was to try to introduce and inject a bit of commander gameplay into like 60 card constructed formats by having this one legendary creature that sits outside of the game and you get to play it. And it just turns out that having a guaranteed 8th card in your hand starting the game that is very strong and you build your deck around and is the linchpin of your entire thing is crazy strong. And yeah, even with the sorcery speed restriction and the extra 3 mana, like Lurus, I think is the most famous of them. It's the one and then hybrid white black. To be able to once a turn, you can play something that costs 2 or less out of your graveyard for free. So you just get like infinite recursion of things as you keep playing them.
Yep.
And all it required was that the permanents in your deck are 2 mana or less, which is all you're doing anyway in formats like Modern, and it was really easy in Commander, and it was all of these things. It was too strong, it was too easy. So yeah, it was very funny watching them errata an entire mechanic, which definitely fixed a lot of it. I don't see it quite as often anymore. I don't play Pioneer, I don't play Modern, I don't play Legacy. I know they're still running pretty rampant in formats like that, but being able, like, turning Lurus from guaranteed 3 mana to 6 mana over the course of a few turns slows it down enough to where it becomes significantly less playable, even though it is still very strong. But this was, I don't know whether it was the worst mechanic they've ever done, but I think it was probably their biggest mistake of a mechanic. And it was, in my opinion, it was them trying to, like I said, do Commander in other formats. And the problem with that is that Commander is very strong and very powerful. And it became too good, too much of a good thing, you know?
Yep. But I guess where I'm coming at from with this, and the whole reason I wanted to bring this up, is these obviously they had their strong characteristics about them, everyone knows how stupid strong they were, but I think their strength came mostly in their brokenness when it came to 60 card constructed. I think these
Yes.
are all fantastic in Commander, where we're already have a building restriction behind us anyway, right? Our decks already have to be up to that 100 singleton copies. You're kind of built around your Commander anyway.
Yeah.
So these are perfect shoehorns in right into Commander as is. And that's why I wanted to go ahead and talk about them today, because of the ones that you are able to play, I think there is some legitimate, very cool building ideas that you can do to kind of spice up a deck of yours with building in the restriction of how a companion works.
Yeah. Before we start talking about all of them individually, have you spent much time playing companions and commander currently, previously?
Yes, actually, I did for a little bit of time. I gave a burn list once before with Obos.
Yeah, dude.
I played around a little bit with Yumori. I play in the deck things like Yoron and Karuga and things like that. And Jagantha was the leader of a commander deck of mine for a little while. So yes,
Nice.
I have played with all the companion cards at least once.
I love that. I love it. I for a while I had a 5-color deck that was Omnath Locus of All with a companion of Gigantha.
Hmm.
So the restriction on Gigantha is that you can't have 2 mana pips that are the same in your cards.
Well,
Um,
we will talk about that later.
yeah,
Yes.
totally. Omnath Locus of All like draws things that have 3 or more mana pips in them and gives you those mana. So it was a cool restriction because I couldn't just put in like all of the ultimatums or anything like that, or even like gruff triplets or something like that that has triple green. It would have to be like a Mardu spell that was white, red, black, or like a Jund spell that was green, red, black. So I personally really like the companions. I like deck building restrictions. To quote Maro on many of his blogs, restrictions breed creativity. I use that in my daily life. I use that when I play Magic, when I'm building decks. I love restrictions and making yourself find creative outlets when you've cornered yourself into something. And the companions do that perfectly. So I'm excited to talk about each of these and some commander ideas for each of the companions.
Excellent. Yes. So let's get started with our list. We do need to start with the two non-bows. Immediately out the gate, though, unfortunately, since day one, Lutri the Spell Chaser has been banned. So you
Yes.
cannot play Lutri in your 99 as your commander or as your companion at all, which sucks because since we just last year had a whole animal themed set with otters, poor Lutri is missing out on his kindred friends.
Yes.
That is such a shame. And you know what? I'm so uppity about this as well because genuinely, Lutri's not a good card, personally.
It is as a companion. It's fine in every other scenario. Like there are better versions of it as both
Yeah.
commanders and in the 99. But the problem is, go ahead and read Lutri and we'll talk about what the problem is.
Yeah, so the reason Lutri got banned day one is because its companion restriction. Lutri itself is 1 and hybrid, 2 hybrid is it mana for a 3/2 elemental otter. Companion, each non-land card in your starting deck has a different name. That's already the building restriction for Commander,
Right.
unfortunately. And that's why it got banned. Because if this card was allowed, any commander deck that was running blue or red could just play this as their companion
Right.
free of charge. And that's not what they wanted. And
Yes.
again, my idea though is that just really, really sucks because the ability that Lutri actually does, which is flash and it enters copy, if you cast it, you copy an instant or sorcery spell you control and can choose two targets for the copy. That's not inherently itself too terribly strong. Like, you can't make the same loops that you can with Dualcaster Mage because one, this is legendary, and two, it only triggers if you cast it. So there's very little combo breaking that Lutri can actually do.
Right. Um, yes. I agree with them banning it. I think that it was the correct thing to do because I disagree with anything that homogenizes the format and makes it so that you have to play it. Otherwise, you're playing an unoptimized version. It's also why I don't love Soul Ring. It's why I don't love Command Tower. Like these cards that go like, well, I'm building a commander deck, so now I just have to pop these in here. Otherwise, I'm just gonna get outraced by everybody who's doing those. Lutri does exactly that, where it's like, well, I'm playing a blue-red deck, so I know I only need 98 cards in my deck, or 97 if I'm playing a partner as well, which I also think is worth mentioning before we dive further than this, because like you said, it's not the command zone. You can have partners and a companion in your deck. So you can sort of start the game with 3 things outside of the deck. And that's a huge advantage. Like even
I have a few of those. Combinations as we get into the other companions later. But yeah, having essentially 3 commanders, it can be
completely broken, even with the restrictions.
Even with the restrictions, yeah. So F to our boy Lutri. I'm so sad we don't get you in the format, but
Rip the boy.
It's all right. We'll get him someday, maybe. We'll see. The other one that has a non-bow synergy that you unfortunately cannot, it's not banned to play as a companion, but you just physically can't because our deck restrictions just do not allow it. And that is Yoron Sky Nomad.
Yep.
It is 3 and 2 hybrids of Azorius mana, a 4/5 bird serpent. That companion, your starting deck contains at least 20 cards more than the minimum deck size. And unfortunately, with Commander, unlike constructed formats where you can play more than the 60 minimum, Commander, we are locked at 100, no changing that. So unfortunately, Yoron cannot be in your companion zone, I suppose. Now, you can play him as your commander, and he can be in your 99 or 98 or whatever, how many you
97,
have.
who knows?
97, something to that degree. Yeah, you can play him in the format still, just in general. And I like Yoron. Yoron's one of my favorites.
Yeah. This is a classic John card.
Yes, because what Yoron actually does is a 4/5 with flying that when it enters the battlefield, exile any number of other non-land permanents you own and control, return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. So it's a blink bird.
Very good.
It's a very fun blink bird. I have one of these in my Brago deck. And to be clarified, by the way, companions, if you have them in the deck, they don't look for their companion restriction. So as long as you're in the right colors, you can play any of these in your deck as long as you meet the color identity restriction, which is great.
A lot of them are very good. So it's
These are all great. Honestly,
Yeah.
these cycle of 10 are some of my favorite legendary creatures they've ever made. All of them are great. I don't think a single one of these is bad.
So the reason why I think Yoron is so good, there's so few mass blink effects, just period. Like you get this, you get Abdel Adrian, you get like Lae'zel's Acrobatics and like Eerie Interlude, and it starts getting pretty hairy after that. There's like another round that's sorcery speed and hardly counts. Like there's just so, I mean, I'm trying to count more than one hand's worth of effects in 30 years of the game. So this is clearly something that they don't do very often, and they made it incredibly restrictive to play. It's only in blue-white or as companion. You can't even play it as a companion in Commander. But it's mega strong, especially if you're doing something like you have. I'm blinking out my. Oh God, it's the prince, the prince that comes in and blinks something for 2 mana.
Charming Prince.
Charming Prince. If you have like Charming Prince and he comes in and then blinks out Urian, and then Urian comes back and blinks out the thing, and you can just make these like a little engine that could of just infinitely blinking, very slowly infinitely blinking.
Yep, that's why I play it in Brago, because like Brago can target Yoron, and Yoron will blink out things like control pieces that are bouncing in and out, but then also blinks out other blinkers like Felidar Guardian and Angel Restoration Angel, Flicker Wisp, stuff like that. Tons of fun.
Stupid.
Yeah, Brago's really fun in there.
There's a million ways to break Urian.
Excellent. So Yoron is unfortunately the one that you cannot do as a companion. So let's go ahead then and let's get started on the ones that you can play as a companion. Starting from the top, Gyruda, Doom of Death.
I'm in on this one. Let me talk about Gyruda.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Hold on, I'm just gonna pull it up here on Scryfall. There it is. Get ready.
Where he was prepared for class.
Well, here's the thing. If you put in the search, like advanced search on Scryfall for companion, it now pulls all the doctor's companions too, and it's really annoying.
Uh-huh.
So Garuda is 4, and then hybrid Demir, blue black. It's a demon kraken, and I love that it's a demon as well. I always forget about that. It's a 6/6. The companion restriction is that your deck contains only cards with even converted mana costs, which includes 0. And when Garuda enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. You put a creature with an even converted mana cost from among those onto the battlefield under your control. I am obsessed with this card. I try to play it as often as I humanly can.
Mhm. For what it's worth, on the most recent printings of Garuda, firstly, one, it does have the errata change that the companion restriction had. Second, that trigger has been codified to say mill, so there is synergy with other cards that say
Nice.
mill.
Each player mills 4.
Yep, it does say that now.
Yes. Thanks,
And yes.
March of the Machine.
Mm-hmm.
That was where they were printed again.
Exactly. Yes, I was actually going to bring that up. That if you are looking for the most up-to-date versions of these cards, March of the Machine, the bonus sheet of the Multiverse Legends, all 10 of these were printed in there. So,
which is great because they needed a place to reprint them with the errata and with new wordings and everything. So I'm glad they did that, and all the art on them is beautiful on the March of the Machine ones.
They're very good. So
Very cool.
So Garuda wants even mana costs in your entire deck, which again, your entire deck has to meet that condition, including your commander that you're playing. So that is important. You can't just play any commander. You have to have all the deck meet your condition.
Right.
You said 0 is a good starting point as well, by the way. Yep. 0, 2,
exactly.
4, 6, 8, blah, blah, blah.
Lands are obviously 0 mana cost as well.
Yep,
so
lands are totally fine on that. The most interesting stuff that you can build into this here is spells that contain X in their mana cost. Since any other zone, X is considered 0.
Right. So it would have to just be X costs, or it would be X plus 2, and then from there forward 2, 4, X4.
Yep. Something that's great. It's a notable trait to think about here, because if you're on the restriction of everything of yours needing to be even, if you include a few cards that are X, you get the flexibility to be able to cast it at whatever you want while still meeting the conditions that Garuda wants you to meet.
Yes.
It's just a nice little flexibility.
Yeah. I also, one of the kind of neat ways to break symmetry with stuff like this is with either things that have adventure on them or different cycling costs than their mana values. Like something that costs 2 but cycles for 1 gives you something to do
during those
off turn that you're having.
Yep.
I love Garuda. I have played it since it's come out. It's one of my top 3 companions of the 10, and it's certainly not 3. I don't know exactly where
2.
It sits in there. It bounces back and forth depending on the day.
All right.
But notably, I love playing Garuda with clones, because most clone effects are 2, 4, or 6 mana. Like the OG clones, you get your Spark doubles, you get Sakashima, which are all non-legendary clones.
That was actually going to be one of the commander suggestions that I was going to pull together to talk about. I pulled together some interesting commander deck ideas. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces paired with Sengir the Dark Baron.
Sengir
gives you your blue-black that you need to play Garuda, and both of them are even mana costs, and Sakashima just doing your clone-related things, and Sengir can then start be like your finisher as like other creatures die and things like that. It's a very, very cool one. That was and you're playing 3 commanders, technically.
Yes.
That's a way to play 3 commanders.
I love it. I really like playing it with either Satoru the Infiltrator, which is the newest iteration of Satoru Umezawa. That's the 2 mana one that says whenever a creature comes in, if you didn't spend any mana on it, you get to draw a card. So you can play him, play Garuda, and then as each of your creatures come in, you just draw a free card off of those. There's also the Master Formed Anew, which is it's another one of my favorite little like theory brews that I've done, where he enters and kind of overtakes a creature. You exile it with an overtake counter or something like that, and then you can have him enter as a copy of anything with an overtake counter. So you can sort of play him after Gyruda and like exile the Gyruda, get an extra one. All the ways that I play Gyruda is just, can I mill my entire library in one turn? Because every clone that would come in, you just choose to keep the original Gyruda, but you get the ETB ability and get to mill another 4. And then if there's not something amazing that somebody else milled that is an even mana cost, you just snag one of your clones and just recycle it. It's like gambling.
Exactly. Yep.
Which I love.
A couple other quick ones real quick that I found out that would be fun commanders. Muldrotha the Gravetide, since that already wants you to be doing graveyardy stuff. And the one downside that companions get is like, they end up in your graveyard or whatever. They can't go back to the sideboard. Like Muldrotha lets you recast it and then you're refilling your graveyard again. Another spicy one I found is Be'lakor the Dark Master from the Warhammer sets. I
don't even know what this card does.
It is let me snag it real quick.
Oh, we didn't come prepared for class, did we, John?
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't make my sheet. Be'lakor the Dark Master is 3 in Grixis for a 6/5 Demon Noble with flying. When it enters, you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of demons you control. Gyruda is a demon.
Oh, Gyruda is a demon.
And whenever another demon enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target.
Rules. That's
sick. So it's a companion you could play with your demon kindred with Be'lakor.
I'm in.
Very cool.
Love that.
Gyruda is great. 8 out of 10. Easy.
Yeah, like I said, easily one of my favorites.
Moving on to probably my favorite, other than Yoron, is Jaga the Wellspring. 4 and a hybrid Gruul mana for a 5/5 legendary elemental elk companion. No card in your starting deck has more than one of the same mana symbol in its mana costs. And then a activated ability of tap, add white, blue, black, red, green. This mana can't be spent to pay generic mana costs.
Sick.
So that is a lot of hoops, kind of. Unfortunately, though, the biggest downside of Jagantha is because its tap ability makes Wooburg, that does limit it to 5 color exclusively, which does suck. Right, you get this really cool looking Gruul legendary that makes a bunch of mana, but you have to play it in a 5 color deck. That's unfortunate. The other unfortunate part is like what you were talking about earlier is the spells that you cast. Firstly, her mana cannot be used on generic costs. So any cost of any kind that has the number inside of a gray circle, this mana from Jagantha cannot be used on that in any capacity.
I forgot that was the other really good part of playing it with Omnath Locus Evolve, because Omnath just converts unused mana into regular old black mana instead. So if you wait like a turn or a phase, then you could just use that 5 mana to pay generic costs, because now it's just all black mana.
Yep. However, one really cool way that you can work around this deck building restriction of her is she cares that the spells that you have, or the permanents or whatever that you have in your deck, all of them have different mana symbols. This does mean that if you have a card that's got a color and like a Phyrexian mana symbol, that is technically a different symbol. So you could play something like a spell that I'm not remembering offhand that is like a blue and a Phyrexian blue or something like that in the deck. If there's a spell like that or whatever.
Vraska that's like 3 black and a Phyrexian black.
Yeah, I think that is. Yep.
Yeah, one of those.
So one of them.
One of my favorite examples is that you can play Ognis the Dragon Lash with it.
What's that?
Which is like one. Hold on, I need to look it up because it's
from the Capenna. It was like a red, a hybrid Gruul, and a black.
I think.
Yep, hybrid mana fits the bill as well.
Right.
Snow and specifically colorless also count as well. So if you got like an Eldrazi that has the colorless symbol up in there specifically, that's good. Or something with a snow mana symbol in its casting cost. Excellent. You can do that as well. Very, very
Yes.
cool. Otherwise, Jengantha's just perfectly fine for 5-color good stuff decks, really.
Definitely. It's nice too having a restriction on a 5-color good stuff deck, because otherwise you just get so lost in the weeds on like, well, I guess I could just play all of the best cards. But again, if you limit it to, oh, I can't have two or more of the same mana pips in my cost. It's so hard talking about it because you never care about these things. You still get to play things like Assassin's Trophy and like all of your like good removal terminates and things like that because they're red black and green black and things like that. You just don't get access to a handful of like, oh, like I can't play Genesis Wave in this deck, you know?
Jengantha really encourages a 5-color deck that really cares about multicolor, I've noticed.
Definitely.
And that's a cool direction to be. It's something cool and unique to do. So, like, one of my commander options, actually, that I found that would be very cool for Jengantha is the Planeswalker, Jared Carthalion. Jared Carthalion wants you to be playing not just multicolor, but he wants you to be casting spells that are all 5-color.
Yeah.
And that is one of the best outlets to use Jengantha's mana for. Just
Easy.
tap her for 5. Here's your 5-color spell. You know, here's your dumb dragon. Here's that board wipe that does like the 5-color thing. Cast Jared. You know, get down Jengantha, and then just cast Jared off of Jengantha. And then you've got all your mana up. It's like it's very, very cool. You did mention Omnath, Locus of All. That's a very fun one as well. Another cheeky one I found was a Horde of Notions. Was a 5-color Elementals Lord, which works with Jengantha because Jengantha is an Elemental.
Love that. I like that you're finding a sneaky Kindred commander for all of these.
Aha.
Which kind of transitions us pretty easily over to our next one, which is Kyr the Orphan Guard.
Speaking
would you Kindred decks?
You want to go for it?
Yeah, this is 1 and Hybrid Selesnya, so 3 mana total for a 3/2 cat beast. Its companion restriction is each creature card in your starting deck is a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast. And it's got vigilance and says each other creature you control that's a cat, elemental, nightmare, dinosaur, or beast gets +1/+1 and has vigilance. So this is a really good anthem on a stick with the restriction of you're already playing a cat's deck. So you might as well throw Kyr in the command zone or sorry, in the companion zone. Or dinosaur is the interesting one for me. Is you could be playing Pantlaza and probably just throw Kyr in the companion zone just to give all of your dinosaurs vigilance as well. I know more than most because I play a Takashi Dig Site Mentor that vigilance is an underrated keyword.
Vigilance and First Strike. People need to play more First Strike.
Yeah, 2025. Play more First Strike and more vigilance. But your creatures are then able to attack and stay back to block. You don't have to make decisions anymore. Like vigilance just makes you like hands off the wheel. We're just going for it. So this is obviously a very aggressive card. This is you're playing this in aggressive creature strategies. You also could play this in a creatureless deck. Notably, you could play this with no other creatures in the deck because all it cares about is that each of your creatures are in fact that grouping of creatures. If you have 0, the restriction is met.
Yeah, I mean, I guess your only real condition would be like, does your commander fit the restriction? Which even that you could bypass if you were to play something like a Planeswalker
commander with Kyr as the ooh. This is spicy. I'm gonna have to sit with this one for a second.
Ooh, what are you thinking?
I don't know, like a Planeswalker. What deck would you be playing that's like a Planeswalker commander is creatureless? I don't know. We'll figure something out. And is also in green white.
I don't
sounds
think
like something that I'd be interested in. Like, I'm gonna go on Moxfield and I'm just gonna build a little list for this.
But yeah, I was just gonna piggyback on you. Yes, just kind of due to the sort of like easy slot in nature that Kindred decks tend to be. This is firstly one of the most aggressive companions you can play. Second, it probably will be one of the easiest to be able to build because again, just any of the lists that it's got written there. If you're in green white and you're already playing those creature types, you might need to make a cut here or there for like a utility creature that doesn't fit the bill, but I think the benefit that you get of having this anthem in your command zone at the cost of like losing Beast Whisperer from your 99, I think makes the trade.
Why does this care about nightmares?
Ikoria had a bunch of nightmare creatures.
Okay.
That one's gonna be definitely the one you probably won't see as much building in your
Right.
99.
Nah, man, we're building 2025. We're building Selesnya Nightmares.
I mean, look, technically speaking, like if you got like a Maskwood Nexus deck, then all your
Or
creatures are nightmares.
changelings. This is
or
also like
changelings.
really good. Now, granted, with changelings, this does not give that +1/+1 to them 5 times over. It's just
No, it
this
doesn't work that
grouping of
way. No.
creatures. If it meets the condition, it gets the +1/+1 in vigilance.
Right. So some easy slotting commanders I found for this. Very obviously, Arabo, Roar of the World. That is a perfect Selesnya cat deck that wants you to be playing cats. Uh,
Yep.
and is a cat in your companion zone, comes down, boosts all your cats. Easy. One of my personal favorite commanders ever then is Jetmir, Nexus of Revels, is
Ugh.
my go-to. I will tell somebody to build. If you want to build a simple deck that wants to do one simple thing, play creatures, Jetmir's your guy. Seriously.
I hate Jetmir.
You hate Jetmir?
I
Well,
hate Jetmir.
Jetmir's an interesting one then because he counts as your cat in the command zone, and then you can
Right.
fill out the list with any combination of the creatures that Karuga wants you to play.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good time as any to mention that your command zone does count as your starting deck as well.
Yes, I mentioned that earlier correctly,
Great.
and
This is a good time for my dumbass to remember that.
Check this one out though. I found this real spicy one. I think this would be a
Never heard
fantastic
of this
build.
card in my life.
Jedit Ojanen. Jedit Ojanen. I think that's right. Mercenary. This was one of the legendary creatures that they made in the Legends Retold slot from Dominaria United.
What are we talking about right now?
All right, follow me on this. Listen to this. Firstly, he's a cat mercenary. One
Great.
white and a blue. When he or another legendary creature enters under your control, you can pay green. And if you do, you make a 2/2 green cat warrior with Forest Walk.
Sneaky Bant.
Sneaky Bant, you get to play legendary cat tribal or just any tribal.
There's a few of those.
Yeah, you play a bunch of legendary cats or legendary dinosaurs, and every single one of them pays green, comes in with a cat that then can be boosted by Karuga. Karuga herself is legendary. So Karuga comes down, pay a green, makes a cat. That cat warrior is now a 3/3 with vigilance and forest walk.
I'm in. That's cool.
Amazing. It's beyond cool. That was the coolest legendary creature I saw that fits the Karuga
I
restriction.
love it, man. I love it.
Oh,
That's
man.
fun. Well, I feel like you should take this next one away as your most recent commander mashup would indicate that this is a favorite of yours.
Yeah, like so he's referring to, we have this video right here that you can check out or I'll put it in the description or something or whatever. I made a companion list with the micro cards from the Tiny Duel decks. And the companion I used for that was Karuga, the Macro Sage, probably my favorite. I think Jingantha is just below Karuga for me, honestly. I love Karuga. 3 and 2 hybrids of Simic mana for a 5/4 legendary dinosaur hippo. Amazing.
Perfect.
Companion
was such a weird set.
Companion restriction. Your starting deck contains only cards with converted mana cost 3 or greater and lands. Every single one of your sorceries, your instants, your artifacts, creatures, you can have whatever in the 98 or whatever, but they all have to be mana value 3 or greater. However, when Karuga enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with mana value 3 or greater. That card draw is amazing, dude.
Yes.
Amazing.
That's some intense card draw from the hippo.
I have Karuga in the build of several decks of mine. Just the amount of time that just comes in and, I'm gonna draw 6 cards because...
Yeah, what are you looking for out of 5 mana? How many cards does it become worth it for him? Is it 5, 6? Is it a fresh hand for 7?
Yeah, a fresh hand usually. That's what I like to see, definitely.
Cool.
it's amazing in the build of big creature decks because everything of yours is already gigantic anyway.
Yeah,
And, you know, like a 5/4 is not incredible, but a 5/4 that could do repeatable card draw if you blink it or reanimate it or whatever, that's so good.
I love it.
I'm a big
That's so
fan of
fun.
this. Yes, it does have quite the significant drawback to be able to play as your companion, as it means you have now basically, especially with green available here, you have lost access to some of the fastest ramp in the game.
Of course.
So yes, as you were joking about, you kind of don't really get to start going off until turn 3, basically.
Hmm.
But if you can work around that, the potential of having the freshest new hand come the late game could pay off for you in
Right.
dividends.
You do get access to things like Altenac the Thrice Called for your ramp, which
Oh yeah.
is sorry, I looked up the say its name card first,
Oh,
but
the stuff like that cycles. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, well, he so you pay 2 and it's a 7 mana 9/9 with trample from Duskmourn. You can pay to discard it from your hand and return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it counts for his restriction, but it becomes 2 mana ramp if you've done something like Evolving Wilds or a fetch land or whatever.
Hmm.
Cycle to land, I don't know. So again, there's just the restrictions of the companions force you to play weird versions of things.
Exactly. Yes, that was actually comes to fruition with one of the commander ideas that I thought about here because, like you had talked about previously with one of the other companions, if you have cards in your deck that sort of like change what their mana cost is, or have
Hmm.
alternate means of casting or cycling or whatever, you know, you can kind of bypass the restriction that Karuga wants you to
Oh yeah.
have while still being able to have things to do. So, like, a commander option that I found for Karuga is Baluna Grand Squall. You can still play this adventures style
Yes.
commander where your adventures could
So
cost.
good.
Yeah, you could have adventures that cost like 1 or 2 or 3,
Yeah.
and then the creatures you get back off of the exile zone from doing the adventure, they meet the companion restriction that Karuga wants you to do.
Yep.
So that's a fantastic one.
Love it.
Um, I also found some good hits like Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty, that just if you're already doing big
Stupid good.
spells anyway, now your big spells are drawing you cards, like Karuga draws you the cards, and then they gain Cascade and so forth and so forth. Just cascading value. It's amazing. And then if you wanted to do Karuga with a dual commander option, I did find Owen Grady and Blue meet the bill
The
on
Jurassic
being,
World ones?
yeah, the Jurassic World ones. Yeah, they meet the condition of being mana value 3 or higher and kind of want you to be doing big stuff anyway. So
Nice.
I don't think it's amazing, but it is a option you could do if you want to do
Yeah.
the threefold thing. Also mostly because Karuga is also a dinosaur, so that
Sure.
also fits the bill.
To me, Karuga feels like one of the more restrictive of them.
Def
Choosing to
Yeah.
either forego your first 2 turns or play weird things like Altenac to try to like give you a fake first few turns is pretty detrimental to most strategies. So hopefully you just got to plan this one out well, I would
Yeah,
say.
I think of the 10 that's here, I think Karuga is a better card in the deck instead
Yeah.
of the companion zone. But if you were willing to try it, I think you could build something quite spicy.
Nice. Well, the exact opposite of that, which is easier to do, is Lurus of the Dream Den, which is the Orzhov one. It's one and then hybrid white black for a 3/2 cat nightmare. Its companion restriction is each permanent card in your starting deck has converted mana cost 2 or less. It has lifelink, and then during each of your turns, you may cast a permanent spell with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard. This is Muldrotha. You're just building a Muldrotha deck with permanence mana value 2 or less. This is ridiculous. Are you
This one
kidding me?
this one is so good.
This one recently got banned. Not in Commander, but did get banned in Pioneer, Legacy, one of those. Or all of them. I don't know.
Like last year, I think. Yeah.
Yes. Because oh my god, it's just so easy. It's a ridiculously easy restriction to meet, especially in 60 card formats. But even in Commander, like in a deck like an Aristocrats deck, where you have all of your blood artists and Zulaport cutthroats. Oop, those all cost 2. And then all of your fodder, like, oops, it cost 1. Like, you can just build all of your permanents to be in that 1 to 2 range. It only cares about it only cares about permanents. So you can still have instance sorceries outside of the 1 and 2 cost of that. So you can still play.
Oh, I missed that.
You can still play board wipes in this deck. You can still play Wrath of God in this deck, and then just recast all of your stuff. It's very strong. This one, it's on my nerves. Lurus was very big in like Timeless. It was huge in Standard. It's really big in Modern. It's rampant. It's everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, once again, you can, for your permanents as well, by the way, you could bypass some of the mana cost 2 or less by playing some cards with X in their mana costs. So I'm not sure if that helps you significantly with being able to replay them out of the graveyard, but
Yeah.
they are technically, like, you could get like X cost artifacts that technically in the deck would be 0, and then you could build them up higher or whatever. But
Yeah.
I missed that part about the permanents, although I guess I wrote it here in my notes, so I must have forgot. But
Yep.
yeah, that's very cool that you could still play all of your best, like, higher than 2 control and removal and reanimator pieces. Well, like you said, yeah, just building this dumb pile of like 1 and 2 drop aristocracy, these want to die, your grave crawlers, your blood ghasts, your blood.
Just give it a try. Just jump on Moxfield, build a list, build an Orzhov aristocrats list, and you tell me how many of those cards cost more than 2. Like, it's just a shoe-in that kind of strategy. Or, like you said, an artifact strategy. Like, I think that doing like an Orzhov's artifacts deck would be really sick with this. And recurring things like Lotus Petal, or recurring even like what's the name of it? I'm drawing a blank. The one that exiles graveyards.
Like a 2-mana? What are you talking about?
1 mana. It is the
Relic of Progenitus?
Relic of Progenitus. Yeah, you can just recur that thing.
That's very fun. Yeah,
super good.
I think I've got an interesting idea for a artifacts one with one of the commander ideas that I've got written here. But yeah, like what you were saying with like an aristocrat things. Bartolome del Prestido. I think I did that right.
Let me do this. I took 4 years of Spanish. Bartolome del Presido.
Thank you. That one.
You got it.
Lost Caverns. Yeah. Just a sack outlet in your command zone. Cost 2. Perfect. He's your ideal aristocrats commander that fits the bill. This one, I feel like for your commander options is probably going to be the most limited, I suppose, because having your commander also fit the theme
has to be
of your 99. So you're not going to get much color choice outside of Orzhov when it comes to picking your commander. If you're going to do Lurus as your companion. How many times are we going to do companion and commander? And I'm going to mix them up every single time
Every single time.
But yeah, but that's not to say you still can't do some spicy things. We just had Sorin of House Markov from Modern Horizons 3 could also be very, very fun, right? Sorin himself.
Sorin of House Karlov?
Sorin of House Karlov. Yep, exactly. He cost 1. And I did find a partner pair that you can actually play with Lurus. It's the...
Love that.
These are technically the Stranger Things cards, but I went with the Universes Within versions as well. This is...
culture.
How you just... Bjorna, Nightfall Alchemist, and Wernog Rider's Chaplain. I believe this one lets you be Mardu. And...
I think it's Esper.
It's Esper? Oh, you're right.
So.
Yes. I'm sorry. I don't have the cards up right now, but I believe it's Esper. It'll be on it's on the video. Here you go.
Hey, it's right here.
Sorry, audio listeners, but these are the Friends Forever cards from the Stranger Things, and both of them fit the condition of being the mana cost that Lurus wants you to do, and they kind of care about your graveyard, so it's synergistic.
I was actually going to mention while we were talking about it how difficult it would be to play this in a 3-color deck, but you nailed it. Partners is the way to do it.
Fantastic. All you have to do is like Stranger Things. And since nobody does, let's move on to Obos, the Prey Piercer.
Since
Let's
nobody liked this objectively popular show.
let's move on to Obosh the Prey Piercer.
Yeah.
This is your Rakdos friend. Obosh is 3 and 2 hybrids of Rakdos mana, a 3/5 Hellion horror. Companion restriction of your deck contains only cards with odd mana value and land cards.
Nice. This is the opposite of Girda.
Opposite of Garuda. Yep, exactly. So this is your 1s, 3s, 5s, 7s, 9s, and surprisingly,
No,
it's
keep
like it.
going.
No, I will not. Um, it's surprisingly challenging to build on that restriction because it's like how easy it is in Commander to do your 1-drop into your 2-drop. It's much more challenging to do your 1-drop play and then skip and then do your
I don't
3-drop.
know, man. Just play 2 1-drops on turn 2.
You could do that too, technically.
I'm building this with only lightning bolts. That's it.
Well, that would be a good card to have in here because then what Obosh actually does is that when a source you control with an odd mana value would deal damage to a permanent or a player, it deals double that damage to the permanent or player instead. So
Bolt for
bu-
6.
built around correctly, this is a Furnace of Wrath in your command zone.
Yeah.
And that's sweet. That's very, very cool, Juice up all that extra damage that your things are doing.
I like it a lot.
I like
as a
it,
burn
yeah.
enjoyer.
I very briefly, I did actually use Obosh as a companion of a really, really bad deck, but it every once in a while, it popped off. It did its thing. I had Obosh as the companion of a Minotaur's deck using
Okay, John.
it was using Sethron, Herloon General, and it made Minotaurs, and all the Minotaurs were even mana value, and they were dealing double damage, and the ones that came in and dealt direct damage.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was very bad, but it was fun.
That's wild.
It was fun. I do enjoy a good Minotaurs deck, but I mean, yeah, there's not much really else to add here. Otherwise, it's just
It kind of does what it says on the tin. It doubles your odd stuff. So any decks that you have, like I said, that care about lightning bolts and things like that are going to benefit from having your little Obosh in the companion zone there.
Some fun ones I found here. Torwaki the Younger. This is a very fun sort of like ping damage style legendary creature. It's in the Rakdos colors. It itself already is increasing the amount of damage that stuff is doing, and then you throw Obosh in there, and that is then increasing off of double or whatever, and you start just pinging damage down. Really, really cool. I thought you would appreciate this notion here. Henzi Toolbox. Love us some good Blitz.
Love a Henzi.
Right? Blitz in these fast boys. They're dealing double damage, and then you get cards out of them as well. Excellent.
Notably, if you're playing it with Henzi, which means just some quick math, you're playing 3-drops and 5-drops, Henzi being a 3-drop. That means you could play Henzi on 3, and then you could play one of your 5-drops on turn 4, which is an off turn for it actually kind of switches Obosh around to then start working on turn 4 and so on.
Yep, very, very cool. And that gives you access to green as well. Whereas this partner pair of Vile Smash of the Fierce and Ravos Soul Tender gives you access to Mardu and a fantastic flinging damage around, right? Like your Vile Smasher is now going to be dealing double damage as you cast your first spell. And Ravos will be there to recur Obosh if it ever dies.
Yep.
Amazing. It's so cool. Very, very fun.
Nice, dude. Well, this is moving on to our last 2 here. This is another one of my favorites. This might be my 3rd favorite, actually.
Really?
Yes. I love Yumori. Yumori the Collector. Couldn't remember the second half of it. Yumori the Collector is 2 and then Golgari colors. It's green, black. Hybrids. For a 4/5 legendary ooze. You know I love an ooze. And its companion restriction is each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type. So only creatures, only artifacts, only instants, only, so on and so forth. As it enters the battlefield, you choose a card type. You're probably going to choose the one you built with. And spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. So it's a, what's that, Cloudstone Key?
Cloudstone Key, yep.
On a command zone card. I think it's so sick. I love building I mean, I build a lot of decks that have 48 creatures in them. Playing this with mostly creatures to me the way to go. But you also could just do all artifacts and have half of your Mystic Forge and Sensei's Divining Top combo just in the command zone for you. That the Cloudstone Key, half of that, third of that.
Yep, I feel like artifact would be a very popular way to go with this here, right? Because when you're dropping the cost on something, what's the immediate first guess to go with? Well, because it drops the cost as far as colorless is concerned, let's just play it right into artifacts. You know what? That's what makes freaking Cloudstone Key so freaking good, I guess. It's an
Right,
artifact.
exactly.
Artifact drops the cost of artifact. You keep cascading that on and on and on. It's great, but yeah, not to discredit the reduction that you can do on things like instants and creatures and planeswalkers. I suppose if you wanted to do oops all planeswalkers.
There was a minute that I was in the process of building a very budget friendly list that was Honest Rutstein with Yumori as a companion.
Ooh, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Which is just creature reduction, and you just go mid range. You just go, I'm going to play creatures, I'm going to throw them at people. Like, that's all I'm trying to do here. Honest Rutstein obviously recurs creatures. Yumori is the companion. You get to do, if both of them are out, your creatures cost 2 less. And then let's say you're playing like a Goreclaw. Like, now your stuff that has 2 cheaper less. So now you can play these 7 drops for 3 mana. Like, it just gets pretty crazy pretty fast. So that'd be my suggestion for Yumori.
Yeah. For me, I sort of kind of feel like a different sort of approach to it. That I feel like Omori is a better card, kind of like Karuga. It fits better inside the build, whereas instead of trying to make a full deck restriction around it as either your commander or in your companion zone, personally.
Sure. I mean, yeah, again, like if you're playing a deck that's already playing a Cloudstone Key, this is exactly Cloudstone Key with an extra mana. Cost 1 more.
And that's totally fine. Yeah, like I said, if you're already playing Cloudstone Key, it's fantastic. Right. I've got some cool. One of the most interesting things I find interesting about this, though, is that since Omori says that each non-land card in your starting deck has to share a card type, you obviously have to have that match your commander. If you are playing a commander that has multiple card types, that would allow you to be able to have your deck filled out with the assorted cards of different card types. So if you're playing a commander like Go Shintai of Life's Origin, you could have your entire build be enchantments. And that fits the build just fine. Or enchantment creatures, even, at least, right?
True.
This is a good companion to play with the dual typed commanders, I guess. Do you think this would be an interesting build in for Rendmaw? Do you think if you made all the permanents in there artifact creatures, do you think it'd be an interesting one with Renma?
You totally could. Just a piece of ramp in the, again, quote unquote command zone.
The
only problem with Yumori that I feel like I've run into is if you're playing it just kind of as a ramp piece, it technically costs 7 mana to get into play, and that's not really what you want to be doing before you're ramping.
From the companion zone,
so
yeah.
he's pretty boring as far as companions go, of like, okay, turn 3, I put him in my hand. Turn 4, I've played it. Now on turn 5, my stuff cost 1 less. Like, he's not unbelievably exciting, but he's a sweet little ooze boy. How could you be mad at him?
I know.
I sure can't.
Yeah, Omori is definitely the most boring, but definitely the most functional, I feel like. Very, very cool. Moving on to our last companion, though, the complete opposite of boring. Man, I think this
one right now is my favorite.
This, for me, I think is where in my rank of the most broken, personally.
Yeah,
like, I have not seen a Lurus list before in paper. I have seen people play Zerta the Dawnwaker. Zerta is messed up.
Sure is. I love that fox.
Love it. Let's talk about it, though, then. Zerta the Dawnwaker is 1 and 2 hybrid Boros mana. A 3/3 legendary elemental fox. Companion restriction. Each permanent card in your starting deck has an activated ability. That is, an activated ability is defined on a card as anything that is a cost a colon, and then the ability that is then being triggered based on that. Most commonly,
Yes, you
you'll
pay to
just
activate it.
Yep. Most commonly, you'll see stuff like a mana cost, a tap symbol, and then a colon. But
Right.
sometimes you'll see other stuff like sacrifice a creature or discard a card, a colon, and then an ability that goes on the stack.
Yes.
Those are all activated abilities.
Yes.
Land.
Notably, something like Alessia, who smiles at death, does not have an activated ability. She has a triggered ability, even though you have to pay for it. So, like John's saying, look for the colon. The colon is what means it's an activated ability.
Correct. And the other hurdle to get through with Zerta the Dawnwaker as well is that you can't have cards in your build that grant an ability. So something like Cryptolith Rite, while that does give a creature the ability to tap to make a green, Cryptolith Rite itself does not have that ability. So you can't have that in.
Right.
Also something like Marvin, Murderous Mimic, who gains activated abilities
Oh, he'd
from
be so
other
good.
yeah, he gains activated abilities from other stuff that's already on the battlefield, but in the deck, he naturally does not have any. So there are some weird nuances here or there you have to look through to be able to include cards in your
Mhm.
Zerta deck. But man, if you meet that cost, the actual ability that Zerta gives you, which is abilities you activate that aren't mana abilities, cost 2 less to activate. This cannot reduce the mana to less than 1. And then her own natural ability on her is 1 mana, tap, and a target creature can't block this turn.
So good, dude. It's just training grounds in the companion zone. I love it so much.
Busted. You
Yep.
absolutely busted. It's amazing.
I still have
Um,
a theory crafted list kicking around that's Queen Kayla Ben Krug with Zerta as the companion and all the bobbleheads from the Fallout series.
yeah, we
Just to
talked
make,
about that last
yeah,
episode,
yeah, to
actually.
make it all cheaper, and then she puts them in for free. It and her ability would cost 2 less rather than costing 4. It's gonna cost 2. Like it's so good.
Yep.
Yeah, Zerta is easily the most fun to build around for me. You just have to put stuff in that has activated abilities. Also,
Yep.
like you get to just play Basalt Monolith as a 1 card infinite mana combo. Because it costs 2. It normally you pay 3, or tap it, it makes 3 mana, and then you can pay 3 to untap it. But instead you can just pay 1 to untap it, and now you've net 2 mana every time you're tapping and untapping it. So it's just so good.
Yep. The one that I know of personally that a friend of mine has, who is it's beyond silly how stupid how good this deck is, and almost the perfect shoehorn in for a Zerta deck. She plays this annoying Kenrith the Returned King deck.
Ooh.
It is beyond. I mean, who else is stacked on activated abilities than
That is
Kenrith?
5 activated abilities in
That is
one creature.
5 activated abilities that all get dropped by 2. Oh, would you like to reanimate a creature for 3? Go for it.
Yes,
Would you
please.
like to draw a card for a blue?
I certainly
Go for
would.
it.
Yes.
It's beyond dumb. Her whole deck is just like Kenrith and Mana Dorks and other cost reducers like
I love
Biomancer's
it.
Familiar and things like that. It's so silly.
I love too that this reduces the cost of like equip abilities, because
Yeah.
equipping is an activated ability. So you could play this in an equipment deck. You can play this with the red white Kellen that searches for an equipment, or like Rayav, or some like really good equipment deck. And you're just like, oh my god. Granted, all of your creatures will have to have activated abilities as well too, but you play them with like Ginger Brute. Ginger Brute has activated abilities on him, has haste, and can make himself unblockable. You want to be playing that in an equipment deck anyway. Like,
Eat your
it,
food for a mana.
right. Yeah,
Delicious.
you can play this in a food deck. There's so many cool things this to me is the most flexible of them. And that's I think why I like it the most. Because sometimes I'll be building a deck and I'm like, oh my god, I have to switch 3 cards out and I can just do a Zerta companion. This is so good.
Yep.
I love Zerta so much.
It's very fun. Zerta, again, I think, like some of the other ones, I think Zerta does also just make a very, very good slot in the deck build itself. But man, if you build around it with the activated abilities in your deck and have just a cost reducer in your companion zone,
Yeah.
it's great. I think it's super cool. Again, I maybe just butthurt a bit from the Kenrith deck that my friend plays, but I'm telling you, it's nuts. It's beyond
So good.
nutty. I
I
love
love
it.
that, dude.
And that brings us to the end of companions, though.
Sure
And
does. What a cool one.
these are so cool. Genuinely. Either in your companion zone, as your commander, or in the 99, 98, however many you're
Yeah,
building.
if you're playing a companion, it would be minimum 98. And
Yeah.
then down from there if you've got companions or if you've got partners as well. My God.
I am a huge advocate of being able to have flexibility of your cards. We know this. We say this
Yeah,
here all the time. The flexibility that a card can offer for you and just the baseline of this cycle of 10 legendary creatures that if you've just got them in your deck, the fact that you have an easier time to cast them because they have the hybrid mana costs in them, and every single one of these has abilities on them to some capacity that is extremely relevant and useful to what commander players like to do.
totally.
These are amazing, dude. Honestly, I think every single one of these should be considered for most any deck that are in within these colors. They offer so much flexibility in their casting. The abilities they do are great. And for deck building restrictions, learning how to become a better deck builder, trying to build these and
Oh,
in your
yes.
companion zone, you will learn so much about the fundamentals of what makes a commander deck run.
Yep. Completely agreed. I think like if you're trying to level up your deck building, this is such an easy way to do it. Like just figure out like, okay, I'm building a Sultai deck. I'm just going with the motions. I've put in my force of will. I've put in my, all of my like free spells and everything. And then just go like, how could I make this deck also work if it had a Yumori companion? You have to like go back and all of a sudden you're like, well, I guess I could play Mystic Snake as one of my counter spells. And like I have to play Reclamation Sage now instead of, all of my, artifact or my, artifact enchantment removal. Your spot removal suddenly becomes like, okay, well, I can run Ravenous Chupacabra, I can run Dalek Drone, and I can run Noxious Gearhulk. And there's my removal suite as creatures that are all going to cost one less each. Stuff like that just makes you like have to think outside of your boxes, like you were saying.
Yep. Great.
Big old fan.
It's if you're to get us to our wrap up here, then if you are looking to try something new this new year, if you're looking to up your commander game and you're starting to want to try to become a better, more experienced deck builder, give a whirl at trying one of the companions in your commander zone, companion zone, whatever you want to call it. You will be surprised the amount of flexibility and openness that these decks can offer to you by simply having a dumb animal friend as your companion.
Absolutely. I would say most New Year's resolutions boil down to try new things and save money. Which obviously we're not playing Magic to save money. However,
For
if
what
you're
that's for what that's worth, though, none of these are expensive,
that's what I was
right?
gonna say is these are some budget creatures and forcing yourself into a different lane rather than what everybody's going for, what's popular or is in high demand, and you have to switch out your 3 visits for Altenac. All of a sudden, you've saved yourself $4, like,
Yeah.
and for your Karuga deck. I'm in. I had a lot of fun with this one. Thanks for putting together all of the homework for this, John.
My
This was a
pleasure.
great time going through all of these with you. For the listeners at home, all of the viewers, give us a story of your companion decks. What's your coolest companion deck that we haven't thought of that always gets a wow whenever you sit down at the table? I want to hear in the comments down below about all of your cool companions. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. If you're on Spotify, thanks for listening. Appreciate you guys being here. This has been the MTG Thoughtcast. We'll see you next weekish.
Maybe. Yeah, something like that. We'll have something new to cook up for you.
Yeah, see you guys around.